Hello everyone, welcome back to Cyber Realm. Today in Cyber Realm we are going to be covering Blender, the interface overview. Now, I want to show you around the whole interface of Blender so that in future you don't get confused about where to click or what to select when you want to do something. The interface here on Blender can look very confusing, most especially if you don't know anything about what all this means. But in less than 20 minutes you'll be knowing everything about this Blender interface, and you'll be knowing literally almost what everything does. But be mindful, some of the words that I may speak may be new to you, but don't worry about that because it's not a big problem. You can figure this out in future videos as I keep explaining while doing what you're supposed to do.
Easy go.
Now, I'm simply going to start with this section whereby you're seeing words changing, keyframe, pan, and view. This section is always showing the key presses that are being pressed inside Blender with the mouse. If you hold a shortcut key, for example Shift, it shows what press on the mouse, what will happen next. You can see if I click the middle mouse button, it's going to pan. If I click the left mouse button, it's going to select keyframe. If I click the right, it's going to change frame. But that's because we are on the lamp. But let me click on this, and then if I hover over, you can see if I hover here, it's saying the right mouse button is going to object content menu, then the middle is going to rotate the view, and then the left is going to select the view. For example, we spoke about these controls in the previous video, but in today's video I'm not going to be speaking about that. I'm going to be basically just showing you the whole interface and trying to explain what each part of this complicated menu does. Now, if you look at Blender here, it has very many panels which are separated. It has separated all its sections into panels. There is a panel here. This is the 3D viewport, our main workspace, which is the most useful part of the whole Blender engine. And then we have this panel, which is the object list panel. And then we have this panel which shows object properties, and not specifically on the object properties but with the world properties and everything. Mainly, let me just call it the settings panel. Then we have the upper line here. You see it already has layouts for us. Blender already has a sample of many layouts for us. We can switch these layouts by maybe jumping. Now it's normally in normal layout but has a modeling tab layout. If you want to start modeling, you can just click there, and then this layout is designed for modeling specifically. If we click here, it will take us to the sculpting layout. This is also mainly made for sculpting if you want to start sculpting. Now, in these layouts, you can simply change the view of the layout if you want. If you feel like you don't want to use this kind. Let me say this is the 3D view, and you want to change it to something else. If I went here and clicked here, it's on 3D viewport. I can just be like, okay, I want to see the UV editor, and the viewport will change to that. You can just set back and put it back to 3D viewport. Same here with this panel. You can just say, okay, it's showing scenes. I may say, let me go to view layouts, to libraries, for example, scenes, if you want to view scenes. But normally it was on layouts, but the button I was looking for mainly is this. If I press here, I can also change it to 3D viewport, and then we can use it like another 3D place. But let's put that back in our normal mode, which was outliner, and to show us back where it was. Same applies here. If you press here, you can select anything, and then it will show the layout here, but I've already showed you the example. Another one is here, this downer one. Now, specifically, let me give a brief. I never spoke about this part. This is the animation timeline. For those who have done some video editing, you know what I'm talking about. For those who have not, if you're making an animation or a video, we create what we call frames, and every frame has a different pose or a location, different transformation of an object or an image or something. And this is the timeline for all those frames. You can play the frames from here. You can pause, record, set keyframes. You can set the start and the end. all that stuff we shall go about that in a different video. We can simply add panels to our Blender overview by simply right clicking an existing line like a border, and then you can say vertical split or horizontal split. You select any, and then it draws a line over, and then once you click, it will divide that into two, and then you can select which view you want here. You can say I want this to be maybe let me say I want this to be in video sequencer, and then boom, you've added another panel into it. If you want to delete it, all you have to do is say join area and hover over the area you want to join, and then it will be deleted from your interface. You can also always press Control Space to widen your view interface if you want to occupy the whole area. Maybe you want to see clearly the panel you are viewing through so that you can see everything in the scene. If you press Control Space, it always puts it on widescreen and off. Just if you keep pressing it of any panel, let me say I've selected here. If I press this, it takes over the whole space. If I press again, it goes back. Now let's talk about something a little more detailed about the 3D overview here. Now this 3D overview, like I mentioned before, it's our main interest of area where we are going to be working from literally all the time. You can see this 3D interface has 3 objects. You can see this object here, and then this. Simply, this is a camera, this is a cube, and then this is a light. Now I showed you how to play around with the controls. We are not going to be doing that now. I think I showed you all about this, but if you look at it closely, it has this kind of menu here. This is like our control menu. If you want to move objects, transformation and everything, you always press this. You can play around with this. We shall be talking about this in the next videos on how to transform, and then everything else. We shall be having an add and transform video in future. This here controls the cursor. If you want to locate the cursor is the main area whereby objects are spawned. If you want to spawn something, we are also not going that in detail right now. So basically that's it about the viewport, the 3D viewport. Let's talk about something, this outliner viewport. Now the outliner viewport is the section whereby it lists everything that is appearing in the scene. Now for example, I remember mentioning that this is our cube. If I select it, you can see the cube word here is selected. Now if I select here, it's outlining for us the cube. If I select this is our light. It also outlines, and it has all the properties of the light and everything that's within the light. If you select, if you want to, if maybe let me say you have a big scene and has hundreds of stuff, and then you snap them separately, instead of looking for the object in here, you can just come to the outliner and look for the list, search for the object, and then you pick it. Let me say camera. If I select camera, you can see the camera is selected. If I select cube, you see the cube is selected. We can always change by pressing this, and then we say let it list for us scenes. We have only one scene for now. Speaking of scenes, let me talk about what scenes are now. You can create multiple different scenes that you can shift. Every scene, it's one Blender file but has very many different environments, which are scenes of course. If you press here, you can add another scene. Let me say if I press this, I can add a new scene. I can copy the settings of a certain scene to another. We're not also going to go in detail about that. If there are many scenes you can select, they can always be here. Okay, let's try and add one scene here, and you say okay, let's add a scene. Now I have scene 0.01. If I select this part, now I can select which scene I want. This is our second scene, this is our first scene which we started from. Now let's talk about this control settings panel, and then maybe we can go to something else. Here I'll start with the most upper part. It is showing the properties of the selected object, the transformation, the location, the rotation, the scale, and everything. There's a list of many things that we shall learn about in future during the videos, and this is not actually the first one. It automatically selects to this part, which is the object properties, but let's go back from skip this and then come back up here, and this is going to show us the different styles of selection of our scene from here, and this is the list of them. I think we spoke about some of them, not from here but here, but they are similar here. We shall use them in future and we shall get to learn more about them. Here the next part is our render engine settings part, whereby you can set up the rendering style, the quality, everything about what is going to be rendered out, what should be rendered out and what should not be rendered, what should be in high quality, and then if you want it low quality, we have engines here, we have EV workbench and cycles. Maybe if you add another plugin, you can add any other engine you want, but EV is the current one. Cycle is the best. It's really slow, but it's the best in producing quality. And then we have workbench, which is possibly the interface we're using now is workbench. Next, there is something that looks like a printer here. This sets for us the output quality of our renders, the size and everything else. We shall learn about that in future also. And then we have another icon here which shows things like pictures. And if you select it, this is the layer, the view layer part, whereby you can select which layers are to be viewed in which style during rendering. Also, that will be explained in future videos. And next we have the scene properties. The scene properties is when you want to set maybe the current camera, which background is going to be in our scene, if you want to set which kind of if it has gravity or not, and many other features which we shall also learn about still in a separate video in future. Then we have the world settings. Now the world settings here, which are the world properties, it is going to show us maybe we want to create our environment. Now we can see our environment is gray, but in future we may learn how to put HDRIs in our environment to make it be colorful or have some realistic pictures behind it. What background you want to have, if you want it colored, you can just set from here. Then we have another section which is collection properties. This is basically the properties of the collection tab here. We shall talk about in a separate video in future also, and then we shall understand this part very well, but basically just keep that in mind. This is the properties of the selected objects, which we have already spoken about. I am thinking we spoke about this, so I'm not going to go in details about this. If you want to transform your object towards the location, the rotation, we shall do this in a separate video, detailed very well. And then we have this part, which is the modifiers tab. The modifiers tab, you can always add very powerful tools. You want to make a cloth, you want to transform the object into a cloth, just add a modifier here. You want to remesh it, you want to smoothen the surface, I'll just take a simple try like smooth modifier. You can see it has reduced our object instead of but if our object had more geometry, which we shall see in future, it would have deformed in a certain style. But let me try something else more of let me triangulate it and then add another one. Let me add now smooth. You see, it is trying to smooth out, but it smoothes out depending on the geometry that is on it. We shall talk about those more details in future, make a more complex object in future, but for now let's leave that to that. And then you can see another part that shows particle properties. It has something like 1 point with bonds going aside, which are not actually bonds, but they look like. So if I select it, here is where we add from our particles. This is going to confuse you, so like we shall also have to cover this in a separate video in future. And then our next object is the physics properties. Now you can add a force field in your landing. You can add if you want to add something like a fluid, a rigid body, any of these, the cloth, collision. It's all done from here. This is the settings tab for it. Our next thing is object constraint properties. It's also another style. Maybe you want to make things like chains and all other stuff of that kind. This is what we should always be using. And then our other tab says object delta properties. Here is what we shall be dealing with, things like shape keys and vertex groups. You understand this when we start working with rigging and everything, and UV maps, force maps, and everything about shading and groups and everything else. You'll see that in future. I don't want to go in deep detail about it because you may have a hard time understanding what it is when we have not learned about some things first. Our next tab here is our material tab. This part is where we select from our materials. Let's say for instance you want the roughness of this object to be in a certain style, or you want it to be like in a rough style, smooth, glossary, mirror. All this is set from this tab, and you can set all the properties on how it looks, how this color is, and everything else about our material. It's already set in here. Now our next tab, this one is a distance away from this. That means it's on tab on, and it holds itself on different features, which is our texture tab. Now you can add as many textures here, whereby the textures are now linked to maybe the materials, and then we make something that really looks nice out of it. Basically, if you want to know what textures are, these are simple images of the realistic world. Things maybe not even realistic world, anything that has roughness or whatever that you can import in here, and then you combine it in a material to make something really look nice. You don't have to question yourself about this. Just keep that in mind. We shall add details about it in the future. Alright guys, I think let me end here with this video. In the next video, we are going to be probably talking about adding objects. The way we have been adding, we're just going to be doing more of it in detail, and then we shall be able to learn how to play around with them, move them to the side, arrange them, and then we shall learn how to delete them. Also learn about the different areas we have in Blender so that we could get more detailed with it.